I stand!
Welcome, gentlemen and any ladies who may have accidentally clicked on this video, to another mind-blowing boob tube featurette. We're glad you're here today. The monkeys and I have been cooking this up at the studio for a while now, and all the test screenings went great, so I think you're going to be happy with what's in store for you. However, before I begin, I'm going to have to lay out some ground rules before I actually start talking about stuff. First off, whenever I'm talking about F.E.A.R, I'm talking about the first two entries into the series, F.E.A.R 1 and F.E.A.R Extraction Point. Everything else in the series after that isn't really worth taking into consideration when discussing F.E.A.R, except maybe to talk about what those games did wrong. Secondly, yes, I will indeed be comparing a game from 2005 to a game released in 2023. Now, I'll admit I am very dumb and I don't really know a ton about game development, but I do know that F.E.A.R was created by a dedicated production company well versed in basically all the technical knowledge that existed at the time. TREPANG2, however, was made by 4 guys on a cocaine binge, and they still made the best game of 2023. The point I'm trying to make here is that I think the advancements in technology we have today are sort of balanced out by the fact that Trepang doesn't have as much budget or as many people behind it as F.E.A.R did. Also, F.E.A.R is really good, and it can hold its own against most modern AAA shooters, let alone an indie one, so I don't have to go easy on it when it comes to comparison time. And finally, as you may have already picked up on, this is not a college research project where I use at least 5 quotes from peer-reviewed sources and write an APA formatted works cited page at the end. It's just a dumb boob tube video made by a bunch of monkeys, so don't take what you see too seriously. So now that we've sufficiently set the stage for today's viewing, let's begin with the companies.
Hey Michael, you ever heard of The Road Not Taken?
The Road Not Taken?
Yeah, it's an old science fiction story from 50 years ago. It's about this alternate universe where the secret to manipulating gravity is actually really simple, and if you can do it, you can travel to different galaxies with ease. So on this one planet, these aliens called the Roxolani, who are a warmongering militaristic species, figure out the technology and use it to conquer other worlds. And eventually they get to Earth, where the humans living on it, of course, never figured out any anti-gravity technology. But here's the thing, the aliens were so focused on upgrading their spaceships that they never really bothered improving their actual weaponry. So when they attack humanity, it's like the opposite of them. Now they're met with a species that spent so much time perfecting warfare that they never really bothered with anything like anti-gravity or prolonged space travel. The aliens invade with matchlock rifles and black powder explosives and are met with automatic guns, combat aircraft, and ballistic missiles. The story ends with one of the alien soldiers having the realization that he just gave a much more advanced and violent species the ability to travel throughout the universe wherever they please.
John, what the hell has that got to do with anything?
I don't know. Just thought it was interesting, I guess.
The events of both F.E.A.R and Trepang are set into motion by 2 antagonistic corporations dabbling in sciences no human being could possibly understand. In Trepang's case, our big bad comes in the form of a colossal worldwide enterprise called Horizon. Now, I know some people may be getting sick of the whole evil companies thing, but honestly, I feel like it goes more into the realism column rather than the cliche one at this point. And besides, Horizon is unique in its own right. While Armacam in the first first F.E.A.R game at least is mostly just a large defense company with a little anomalous research on the side, Horizon is a gigantic mega corporation with an iron grip stranglehold on the entire world so strong that they've essentially converted all of it to a surveillance state. When I first played through the game, I thought the best way to describe them would be to say they're basically the SCP Foundation, but instead of keeping apocalyptic hell monsters locked away underground until the end of time, which is what you should do, Horizon would probably try to figure out a way to make money off of them. But now, after digging through the game files and finding all these advertisements and articles about them, I realized that there's so much more than that. They have sites of operation all around the globe and sell services for just about anything you can think of, from weapons manufacturing to elder care to clothing to real estate to home delivery to wedding planning and even reproducing dead family members with AI apparently. The world of Trepang strikes me as a very real look into the dystopian future that surely awaits us all. Not one of those outdated viewpoints that are like, fuck the corporations, man, we gotta burn the city, dude. But one where companies are our friends. A future where companies not only engage in mass censorship, but also trick citizens into performing censorship for them as well.
Oof, I work at a Horizon warehouse and they have a gay pride flag hanging right above the suicide mats. They would have never killed that journalist. I'm reporting your post. Be better.
A future full of corporate Memphis art, home automation, and virtual reality in between 12-hour shifts.
Personally, I like the idea of a reproductive suppression field for anyone with a net worth below $1 million. I think Horizon should give it a shot.
A future where everyone is living in pods and eating processed food out of vacuum-sealed packages and owning nothing, and we're all happy. And everywhere you go, you see Horizon. Okay, I'll admit that was a whole lot of conjecture just now and may not have even been what the developers were going for, but regardless, they did a fantastic job with the world building of their game, and Horizon is really only a small part of it. To be honest though, I'm not sure if me spending more mental time in a fictional world full of monsters and murderous psychopaths dominated by an evil megacorporation and shadow organization is a testament to how well made it is,
or a sign of how much the real world sucks hairy ass.
Nonetheless, I'll come back to Horizon when I discuss the plot of the games, but first let's have a look at Armacam from F.E.A.R real quick. Now Armacam is certainly very similar to Horizon and the latter clearly draws at least some influence from it, but the scale of their operations is much smaller. Armacam isn't responsible for any worldwide dystopias or anything, they're mostly just a very large weapons and aerospace business that, like Horizon, ignored basic human rights just a little too much and delved just a little too far into scientific realms just a little too beyond human comprehension. Now, that's not to say they're uninteresting, of course, as they are the ones who put the whole shit show of F.E.A.R into motion, but really, that's all that needs to be said about them for now. So now that we've looked at who our antagonists are, who do we actually fight in these games? Well, in Trepang's case, the answer is pretty simple: good old 1-800 bad guys. Horizon employs a shit ton of mercenaries to the point that its military is apparently stronger than most small countries, and it's even been commissioned by governments to put down insurrections and do who knows what other types of dirty work. In-game, the mercenaries we battle take many forms and come from numerous different backgrounds, mostly appearing as tall, lean men wearing body armor and ski masks, but also sometimes slightly more unorthodox uniforms. I, for one, was quite surprised when I first played the oil rig level and noticed that the workers on it were all strapped and rearing to kill me the moment I walked outside. There's the HECU troopers, the anomalous mercenary units, the lawyer thugs who we'll be looking at much closer later. There's also the Horizon Black Ops soldiers who have slightly more skill than the usual mercs and are recognizable by their distinctive red night vision goggles that they can sometimes be seen wearing in broad daylight for some reason. But still, none of them are a match for 106, right? I mean, what the hell are they gonna do against a guy who can turn invisible at will, slide at breakneck speeds on just about any surface you can think of, break through handcuffs rated for 1,000 pounds of pressure?
Impressive! You've upgraded your armor! I've made some upgrades of my own!
bastards. I got you dead to rights now. Oh my god! The Horizon juggies are completely off the chain, man. You know how in most games when you shoot a heavy enemy's weak point, eventually they die? Well, in Trepang, the juggies don't really care when you shoot the oxygen tank on their back. It just knocks them over and takes away a bit of their armor. The amount of punishment they can take is ridiculous, and whenever there's two of them in one room... God, man, what the fuck? Seriously, if you're deep into a level and you hear a guy lumbering around in a bomb suit speaking in a heavy southern drawl, prepare your anus. You can zip around throwing mall cops and blasting Talon units until the sun goes down, but when a juggy shows up, you legitimately have to slow your roll and think strategically, at least on higher difficulties. So yeah, all in all, the Horizon Mercs in Trepang do a pretty good job acting as primary antagonists and the core of the main gameplay loop. We'll discuss them more when I get to the mechanics section of the video, but for now, just know that they're a very entertaining group of evil bastards, and honestly, they've done pretty well for themselves, especially when you consider who their predecessors are. How many times have you played a video game where the standard level 1 bad guys were anything more than just basic punching bags or moving targets? Honestly, have you ever fought an enemy that was difficult not because of how much damage they dealt or how much health they had or how many of them there were, but because of things like the way they positioned themselves or worked with one another or adapted to the way you fought them? What if they made a game where every battle against the default regular minions was as engaging as a fight against a special enemy or a boss or maybe even another human being? Well, this very question was answered back in 2005, and it turns out that the result is you get the best video game ever created. The replicas are just another reason among many why F.E.A.R is as timeless as the question of whether or not you eat or drink soup. These antagonistic terrorists take the form of genetically engineered super soldier clones controlled by a telepathic commander who's recently had his mind taken over by his insane dead ghost Okay, actually, never mind that for now. They're clones, okay? That's why they're called replicas. But when you think of clones, you probably think of guys who look like this, or maybe this, right? But as you've seen, the replicas don't really look like that at all. Their appearances are unique in that they perfectly straddle the line between modern and futuristic. You can put this guy into a high-tech research facility or a subway station and he'll fit just fine in both. You could have this guy pilot a mech suit or drive an armored car and he won't look out of place doing either. You can give this guy a laser gun and put him in an office space and it still won't break immersion. Now there is one personal exception to this rule, with that being the design of the Elite Laser Replica. Granted, this guy uses an actual bona fide laser gun, so of course his design should be more sci-fi than the others, but to me he does look just a little too out of place in a grounded environment like a parking garage or a hospital. Still though, even the heavies aren't anything too ridiculous. When you first see them, you might assume that they're not human because of their 4 glowing eyes and the loud monstrous roars they emit, but when you take one down and get a closer look, you see it's just a big dude in body armor and the 4 glowing lights are just his headlamps. Even when you do come across something futuristic like the REV6 mech suit, it's still grounded in realism without being too absurd. Quick aside here, personally I think mech suits or any type of robot walker are very difficult to pull off correctly in fiction, because in the back of my mind I'm always going to be thinking to myself, okay, how is this any better than just using a tank? I mean, the energy cost to move a heavily armored machine with anything other than jets or wheels is going to be through the roof, so I like when a story actually shows what makes their mechs more useful. Okay, real quick, the mech on the screen you're seeing right now is called the REV8 Leviathan. I don't have time to talk about it in depth, but I just want to mention that the first time you see it, it pops out from behind one of the armored cars that you can see here shaking around a bit. The implication being that the replicas just crammed the thing in there somehow, even though it's clearly larger than the truck itself. So I mean, how do you... Anyway, as I was saying, I like it when a story takes an unreasonable concept like a mech suit and makes it actually practical, usually by giving it some kind of special attribute. The ATTEs from Star Wars can climb up walls, the Titans from Titanfall have a special nuclear battery apparatus so power consumption isn't a concern for them, and those things from Warhammer are just automatic win buttons. I mean, holy shit-a-moly. In F.E.A.R, mechs exist to put heavy armor in tight spaces. That's it. No running up walls, no giant swords, no nuclear batteries. They're only used because they can get in places where a tank could never go. And if you look closely, you'll see it's actually not even a robot or anything. There's a replica in there. Now, of course, all this isn't to say that the replica forces are too grounded, since F.E.A.R does like to get adventurous, but the bottom line is that they never cross over into being anything too unbelievable for the world they inhabit. If they were too sci-fi looking, they would look like this, and if they weren't sci-fi enough, they would look like this, and then they wouldn't look like clones anymore. They just look like boring regular old soldier guys. Instead, they're perfectly balanced right in the middle. This is thanks to an ancient and long forgotten technique of game development known as an art style. Nowadays, they're exclusive only to a select few single player games, but multiplayer games used to have them too before companies realized that without them they could get more money from 12-year-olds. In addition to their spectacular visual design, the replicas boast an exceptional and highly innovative AI system. Now, in video games, there are 2 categories of enemy AI. Dog AI, which are for enemies that walk towards you and attack you, and Whack-A-Mole AI, which is for enemies that duck behind cover, pop out, shoot at you, and then duck back down to repeat the cycle. The replicas were revolutionary because they were some of, if not the first video game enemies in history to boast an AI system from an entirely new category. The literally anything else category. I'll elaborate more on how the replicas act in gameplay when I get to the gameplay section, but for now I just want to mention that their unique nature in gameplay also extends into the game's story as well. F.E.A.R might be one of the only games I've played where the fucking jag-off grunts you killed dozens of legitimately win in the end. Like, imagine if in Halo the story ends with the elites victorious or Gordon Freeman dying to some random soldier in Half-Life. That's almost what happens in this game. After they beat the point man and his buddies to the containment site where Alma is located and she gets set loose, the replicas take over the entire city and the DLC ends with everything being basically completely It's not like other games where you kinda have to take their word for it when they tell you that you're up against an elite military force or an unstoppable interdimensional galactic empire. You'll see firsthand that the replicas are serious business. On top of killing you as the player a lot, all throughout the games you see replicas picking off your friends and slowing your progress, always one step ahead of the point man at every turn, which makes them seem more like an actual credible threat in the story rather than just being a bunch of bullseyes serving as little more than set decoration. Here, look at this one segment in the 6th interval of the first game. The point man is making his way through Armacam headquarters and you see a battle between some ATC mercenaries and a few replicas. Rather than showing a generic scripted event where the replicas just unceremoniously execute a bunch of ATC guys, you get to see an actual real-time gunfight where the replicas overwhelm the mercenaries with tactical superiority. Why bother using a scripted event when you've actually put your money where your mouth is and created the enemies in a way that's faithful to the story? Now, I'm sure that a large amount of personality is just about the last thing you would expect a test tube manufactured super soldier that can't think for himself to have, but once again the replicas break the mold. You'd be surprised and maybe even a little unnerved at just how much character they can display at times.
Okay, fellas, get ready. He'll be coming through here in about 3 minutes. Christopher, I want you to get up on the walkway there and wait for when he comes around the corner. And for gosh sake, if you do get plugged, don't just slump over and die. Put some drama into it and throw yourself screaming from the ledge. Oh, shit!
Now obviously you won't hear things like a replica chatting with his buddy about how his wife is pregnant again, or hear a couple of them talking about the Mets game last night, but during combat they argue with each other and are constantly giving callouts and screaming at something, and it just adds so much to every fight. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about their thematic motifs. Whenever human clones or any type of like advanced robot AI are introduced in fiction, there's usually some kind of conflict about their place in the world or what it means to be a human, but not in F.E.A.R. There's no Blade Runner Tears in Rain scene where the point man is rescued by one of the very men he's been fighting against.
All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
There's no realization of expendability between Paxton and his men, no revolution against the system, nothing whatsoever that some video essayist could make a boring 20-minute overanalyzation of. The replicas are evil beings created out of a government commission to Armacam with the objective of creating a perfect soldier, and it's said that the perfect soldier is one that operates as though he is already dead. He isn't concerned about whether or not this will be the last battle he fights in or if he'll end up in heaven or hell. He doesn't think of the fact that the guy he's about to kill probably has family back home waiting for his return, or about how the dead body laying next to him looks a lot like his friend from middle school. He doesn't get homesick remembering the baseball games or the long romantic walks with his girlfriend and their dog. He doesn't question orders, he doesn't complain, he doesn't make a fuss. The perfect soldier functions without any of the human elements that would hinder his mission. He operates without hesitation, without compassion, without remorse, without fear. But when you strip away everything that makes a man human and leave nothing but a hollow shell, a replica, with his only ambition being a festering desire to kill, you didn't make a soldier. You made a monster, and it is the nature of monsters to destroy their makers.